Hello and welcome to this episode of Own the Journey, where we are talking to amazing people from around the world. And today we have the privilege of speaking with Dr. Stephen Rice, who runs an optometry practice here in Springfield, Missouri, and we're just thrilled to have him here. Thanks for being with us, Steve.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I always love getting to visit with you.
Yeah.
So this will be fun.
This is going to be a lot of fun. So tell us a little bit about your history, how you landed in optometry. It's not just a normal thing that kids grow up and say, one day I want to be an eye doctor.
Well, I was born in St. Louis, downtown St. Louis. One of the unique things about me is I went to 13 different schools before I graduated high school. So we lived all over the place in Missouri, Illinois, California, and Arizona. And in high school, had a class, it's like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And it's like, so I did the whole pros and cons of things, and I wanted to be in healthcare. I wanted to be in a profession that could be helpful. I wanted to be an important part of the community to give back. And as I went through I don't want to be in mouths, I don't want to work on feet, I don't like tons of blood and guts, life and death decisions. So optometry was where I landed. And Lord was looking out for me because it's been a perfect fit.
Oh, that's awesome. And you've transitioned inside of your organization. I mean, you came to work inside the business, and it's grown to multiple locations. And how many staff do you guys have now?
Well, it was just when I started, I came in as a partner back in '89, and there were 4 of us, but 2 retired soon afterwards. So it was basically another doc, Dr. Lynn Hernan, and I started, and we just had 1 location, 8 employees. And now we have 5 locations, 12 docs, and I think 85 employees.
Wow,
so just kind of crazy.
Yeah. So how do you transition from being a doctor to being an entrepreneur? I mean, that's got to be kind of tough. They don't teach you all the ways of the world when you go to school.
They really don't. But one of the things that I kind of grew up with entrepreneurs and had that spirit from the very get-go. And I saw, I saw my family working super hard and trying lots of different things. They weren't afraid to take chances, and failure was just an opportunity to do something different or better. And so I had that kind of in me, and that was one of the things that I wanted to go into private practice optometry. Lots of ways to practice optometry, and so the opportunity to kind of run the business, you're right, we don't get any of that education or learning until you get in the middle of it. And fortunately, it's a lot easier to learn and make mistakes when you have a staff of 8. So there was a lot of learning as we went along. But I like to surround myself with really smart people, as you probably try to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
And you realize as you go along you can't do it all yourself, and you try to get folks that are aligned in the same thing, and we're in the service industry, and that's important to me. And so I think one of our guiding principles is treat every patient that walks in the door like they're your grandmother or your best friend, and create those relationships that I literally have been doing this for 35 years, and they're seeing patients that I saw when I came to Springfield on day 1. Wow. Which is very humbling. But very impactful and powerful, and I think if you treat folks right, they'll treat you well too. So learning the business part of it, again, same thing. Not only surround yourself in your own small world, in your office and your employees and partners, but also go out and other business leaders. I've got lots of different folks that are mentors and groups that I've learned along the way that there are better ways to do things. And I think every day, if you haven't learned something new, you probably blew it. You weren't paying attention.
I love the approach. I love the focus on service. I think that's sometimes lost when people are trying to go fast and marry the entrepreneurship and growth and all of those things. They forget at the heart of everything that the goal is really to serve others and to make a difference in their lives. And so I appreciate that.
And I think it's probably more so now than it ever was. I think we're becoming more and more disconnected as a world, and that scares me a little bit, to be honest with you. But people do crave to belong, and if you care for people and know that they can trust you to do the right thing for them, I think that's very valuable. And I think I believe life is full of cycles, and I think right now this world has gone so far where we're kind of unattached. We're going to have to circle back and start attaching a little bit more, because I don't think you can everybody work from home all the time and not, not be with people. So
yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that the sense of belonging, I mean, it drives the culture of the business, and I think it contributes, or the lack of that is what's contributing to kind of what I would almost describe as an epidemic as it relates to mental health, wellness, and challenges. I mean, we're seeing it as part of COVID fallout and everything else, and so really getting people to connect, I think, is invaluable.
Right. Can't agree more, and it's tough because you start talking about mental health. None of us are experts in mental health.
Right.
Not none, but not most of us are authorities on that. And man, the workforce has changed, and there's a lot of challenges that they're facing, and they're not really necessarily getting the support because they're not connected.
Yeah.
So it's a problem for sure.
Yeah, it is. So let's talk about so a lot of people don't understand your world and how you get paid. So much of it is based on reimbursements where the rates are set. And I'm going to take that and then fold that right into the culture and the people aspects of it, because I think it has a direct correlation. So when you're trying to build a business and you don't get to control your own pricing and your own schedule from a fee perspective, how do you manage the business? It's got to make it tough.
It's a very, very big challenge, and like everything in our world, it seems like price dictates decisions, and I think price is certainly important. But the value is really what someone will pay for the service that you provide. And so the vision plans, it's not really insurance. There's a lot of misunderstanding in our world, because the vision plan is essentially just a discount plan, but everybody comes in thinking, my employer got me this awesome vision insurance and I can come in and get glasses, contacts, an exam, shoe shine, and breakfast rolls, and it's only going to cost me $10. Well, the reality is that's not what's happening. And so a lot of what we have to do is educate the patient to make sure they understand what it is that they have. And then really our job is to be the expert. They came to us because they want to know what is best for me and my health, my eye health, my vision. Tell me what I need. And so we just tell them, here's what we recommend for your day at work, what you do outside of work, your hobbies, whatever it is. These are the things that we have to do on the eye health side. It might be dry eyes or whatever it is. Lots of health parts to that. The vision plans don't even know what that is. So the patient comes in and they've scratched their eye, and we've got to take care of that, and they bring in their vision plan. It's like that, they don't even know what a scratched cornea, they don't even know what a cornea is, right? And so we have to then explain the difference between those two things. So a lot of education. You have to play within the rules, and we just tell folks this is what your plan will allow, and it's a good thing because they're giving you, say, some benefit. Let's utilize that benefit, but the reality is that's only going to get you a little bit of what you need. So it's educating, it's making sure that my staff understands how the system works, and again, always be just honest with folks, and they're going to let them make the decision on what they want. And make sure that we've always positioned ourselves since I started to be a leader not only in our community but a leader in the field of eye care. And so we like to be the first to market on new technology, new materials, new treatments. We're always going to try to be that. And so I think patients understand that, and some patients that's not important, and they may not be a great fit for what the vision clinic provides. Right. But we have to look at those limitations. And realize that we got to let patients know this is what your benefits are, but that isn't going to cover the things that you need, and you have to make the decision. Do you want to go ahead and cover, pay for those things that we think can be best for you? Right.
And in the timing of cash flow has got to be a little bit of a challenge, because don't you file that and sometimes the payments don't come quickly or regularly? Yeah,
in fact, we do things. It's like a cash pay or on-time discount, because realistically it'll take sometimes way too long to get compensated back for the services you provided before. So as you get rolling, you can make it, you got to make it work. But we're a totally cash flow business, which was starkly evident when COVID hit and the CDC shut our doors down, because all of a sudden bills kept coming, but we didn't have inflow of cash flow.
Right.
So yeah, and we're doing more and more because that whole industry, that vision plan is almost like a throw-in. And so there's really not a lot of value to it. If you don't pay for it, there's not a lot of value to it. And so we're starting to do more and more things that are really centered on what patients are needing the most. And they're needing a lot of things that aren't just related to a pair of glasses or contact lenses. A lot of specialty contact lenses, a lot of dry eye stuff, a lot of things that are, I would consider eye health more than just glasses and contact lenses.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, you talked about the technology and the impact that has had on the industry. I know that, being one of the first to bring things to the table, over the last several years, I know that there's been tremendous change in that arena and what you're able to do with some of the new technologies and the machines that you put your head into. Yeah.
It really is mind-blowing, and it's been one of the funnest things. One of the things that I always kind of talk to my staff about is we value knowledge and we value initiative, and that we love lifelong learners because our industry changes just like everything changes every day. I mean, it really is at light speed. And so the things that we're doing now, in fact, I tell some patients, if I would treat you like I did 15 years ago, I'd probably be in jail, because we don't treat that particular disease. Let's say glaucoma, for example. The amount of stuff we've learned in the past just 15, 20 years about the whole disease itself and how to treat it and the things we have to be able to treat it, it's crazy. And so we love to embrace technology. We need to be smart with technology. Technology can help us, but it can burn you and get you going down the wrong road sometimes. So, but just for patient care and the new things that are coming out, literally there's always something. In fact, we were just talking to someone this morning, said, "Oh, Dr. Rice," you know how that happens, right? You're just in the community. "Oh, that's Tom Douglas, he wrote a book, he's a big dog in town." And it's like, "Oh, how you doing?" He says, "Well, I couldn't see you, and I ended up seeing another one of your docs, and I had a retina detachment." And as we talked about it, he was super nearsighted. And when he was a kid, he kept getting more nearsighted. And as he got more nearsighted, it turns out that you can become at risk for other health conditions, like a retina detachment. And we started talking, it's like we now have the ability to slow down nearsightedness in little kids.
Wow.
That can keep them from getting super nearsighted and having those kind of problems, retina detachments and cataracts and macular degeneration. So that is pretty awesome and pretty new. So we were the first around here to get some brand new contact lenses that slow down that nearsighted progression, kind of keep that kid's eye from lengthening.
Yeah.
And so there's so much of that stuff that keeps coming out. I mean, there are drops on the horizon to keep you from losing the ability to focus on things up close. That could be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, technology is amazing, and we love to embrace it. Yeah, embrace change. Got to do that.
That's right. So when you have grown the business over the years, you brought your family in. So you got your daughter working inside the organization, and her husband. Is that right?
No, my daughter, my son, and my daughter-in-law.
Okay, daughter-in-law.
Yeah, they're all part of the 12 docs of the Vision Clinic.
Wow.
Dr. Thomas actually started out as a 5-year-old patient, and she's now kind of with us. But people always ask, well, what did you do to make them be eye doctors? And I said, I honestly didn't do anything. We never talked about it.
Yeah.
And I think they just saw that, I get up in the morning, love going to work, and I'm excited and passionate about what I do. And I think that they must have just thought that seems like a pretty good deal. My son, early on, when first time I knew that he was going to pursue that, we were visiting a college, and there's a small group, an honors college kind of group, and go around about 10 kids. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? My wife is sitting on one side, and I'm on the other, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to be an optometrist." I'm like, "You are?" Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
And he was pretty focused. That's what he wanted to do and never wavered. My daughter literally tried 14 things as she was in undergrad, and to her credit, thought I might want to do this, and she'd go work in that and explore and go out and talk to people. And she decided that, we're driving down to Arkansas with my wife. She calls and says, "Dad, I think I'm going to be an optometrist." She's on a speakerphone. I'm like, what are you talking about? And my wife was whacking me. It's like, quit, you're dissuading her from it. It's like, no, I just didn't know about this. So I don't, it's pretty cool. I don't work directly with them for the most part, because we have 5 locations, which is good. Now, we have discussions with my wife early on, because that's what our world is. She's a nurse, and we would get together. We always get together on Sundays for dinner and family time. And after about a month or 2, she's like, all right, time out. We're gonna make a rule. You get 5 minutes to talk eye stuff. After that, no more eye stuff. It's like, okay, duly noted. So, but it's pretty cool to have them in the practice. But they're associates, just like all my other associates are. They work hard, and they're a great asset to the practice, like all my docs are. So.
That's cool. Awesome. Yeah, there's got to be some challenges. I've worked closely with my family over the years, and family dynamics sometimes get in the way. Have you guys navigated through that really well? Is there any advice or ground rules that you would recommend that businesses that are working closely with the family would put in place? Yeah,
I guess I don't. So far, we haven't run into anything. It may be just because we haven't been together as long. But when the kids grew up, one of the great things about being in independent practice and owning your own business is that I was committed to being a kind of an involved parent. And so I did lots of coaching their basketball and softball and baseball teams, and they had this conversation when they were little, right? It's like, hey, it kind of is a bummer when you're a coach's kid, because you have to be better than everybody else, or you can't just get, you can't
earn it.
And so you have to realize that you got to, 1, be on your absolute best behavior, 2, give your best, and there are no gimmies. And so they realized that, I think, just growing up, that I'm not going to treat them any differently than I treat everybody else on the team. And so we haven't really run into that.
That's awesome.
That's been good.
That's good advice. Starting when they're young, it makes a whole different attitude as they get older, and I'm sure that's played into it. So when you talked about you've been an involved dad, involved coach, and all of those kind of things, giving back is a big part of who you are. At the very beginning, you talked about community and being able to serve others. Tell us just a little bit about some of the trips you've taken internationally to give back, and what kind of an impact that's had on you and on your family as they've done some of that.
Well, I grew up in a family that didn't have a lot, but they would give the shirt off their back to someone in need, and so that's just instilled in me. So benevolent. I tell the story. The kids were very little, and we went to we do jury men's and women's basketball exams, and have forever and ever and ever. And so we went to one of their auctions, and so we came back. The kids were still awake, and they're like, "What did you win?" It's like, well, we won a year's worth of Andy's frozen custards. Oh, this is awesome! They're just jumping up and down, excited. But we gave it to the team because that's a big deal to them. Oh, awesome! And what else did you win? What else did you win? It's like, well, then we won, and it was another thing that we gave back to. And they're just like, whoa. And I said, there's a word called benevolent. And they're little, right? It's like, what's benevolent? And it's like, so we go through this little conversation, and they're thinking about it, and they're trying to register it all, and it's like, I don't know that I like benevolence. I just lost Andy's frozen custard. So anyway, international trips, there's a group called VOSH, which is Volunteer Optometric Services to Humanity. And sometimes we forget how fortunate and privileged we are to be in the United States. And so when you go, the very first trip I went on was many, many years ago, and everybody said, you're going to go there, there are going to be people waiting in line to get an eye exam and get glasses. And so when you go down there, really literally the first trip I went to was Dominican Republic. It was like a 2-hour bus ride out from where we were staying, and we get there, and literally there's a long line of patients that have been standing for 2 days to get their eyes examined.
Oh my God.
And so you do as many eye exams and give away as many glasses and treat as much as you can while you're there. And it's very humbling. Because you realize after doing 10 of those trips in all kinds of South and Central American countries that lot of people in the world, the vast majority of the people in the world don't live like we do. They don't have what we have, but they have family and they have community, and they're happy. And that's a powerful thing. And so I think my kids heard me talk about that. I gave lots of programs to my Rotary Club and you know, community about the experience, and they also liked that kind of concept and grew up with that. And when they went on those trips, I like we were talking earlier, I believe every high school junior, senior, freshman, sophomore, college, at least once go spend a week in a third world country, because it grounds you. And it makes you realize that we take an awful lot for granted. Yeah. And there's a lot of ways to be happy, and you know, you don't need all the material things to make that happen. So benevolence was in my genes, you know, and it's just in my DNA. And I think my kids have a very similar kind of thing, because that's what they kind of lived, and we've done a lot of that stuff through our life. Yeah,
that's amazing. And I think what you said about in terms of just service and the humbling aspect of that, I think that comes full circle. I think, I mean, you're my doctor and you do such a fantastic job. I think that you feel that in the culture of your staff. I mean, that service to others, that humbling or humble approach to how you guys just have a mission to take care of people. And I can see that that's all part of the story.
And that's a huge, huge piece of one of the differentiators of what we do is you know, benevolence is part of our DNA, part of the Vision Clinic DNA. And fortunately, again, you try to surround yourself with people that kind of are like-minded on that front. And you know, I think that the greatest compliment I can get is the one you gave. When you walk into the office, you feel like I'm kind of a part of the family, I'm part of the group, and they're going to take care of me. And I think that that's something that we work on continuously. And you realize that if you don't, it's easy to lose. Because especially in today's world, just so fast and action-packed, and you know, it's just
transactional if you let it.
Yeah, and we can't. That's not who we are. As long as I'm around, that's not who we're going to be. So, but I feel really strongly about our staff. Is we meet and talk about that a lot. So
that's fantastic.
And when we bring them on board, we let them know that's kind of who we are, and that's what you're getting into. You know, so hopefully no surprises.
Well, let's talk about the culture and staffing and some of the challenges. We touched on it earlier in terms of fee constraints and some of the challenges. And you know, when after COVID and the big resignation and all that, everybody was dealing with staffing challenges. What have you guys focused on beyond just culture and those kind of things to keep the right people and, you know, attract the right people? And you guys have, you know, retail hours for the most part as well, and so that's not easy for families sometimes to deal with.
Yeah, it has been without a doubt hardest thing ever have had to deal with is that great resignation thing. You know, we came through COVID, the CDC shut us down, and that was brutal. It was 6 weeks. Everyone came back. We stayed connected to everyone and tried to support everyone, and met weekly on a Zoom kind of deal. And we felt really good about coming out of it, but holy mackerel, something fell apart. And we'd never experienced anything like it. And so how did we deal with it? We basically have doubled down on our culture. Because I think that we did have to reassess, because I think there were some seriously artificial things on the compensation front, and just in our community, the hospitals are the big employers in town. They made a decision that if you didn't have a COVID vaccine, you couldn't work for us, and so a lot of people quit, and they said, now what are we going to do? So they overnight raised what everybody minimum-wise was making, and so it impacted us significantly. We always felt like we were very, very fair in compensation. We'll never pay the absolute most. You could always go somewhere and make more money, but We did lose some folks because of that, and thinking that I wanted to work from home, and I think priorities changed a little bit, and so basically we have restructured some salary stuff. We've talked a lot about it and the reality of the industry, and we can't just, if I could pay everybody $100,000 a year, I would do it, but it's not reality.
Yeah.
And so we basically have just kind of doubled down on the whole you. And money isn't absolutely everything, just like when our patients come in, they've got, it's about value, and so really that's what we've done. We've doubled down on making sure that everybody knows who we are, what we are, and that we're going to be here for you, and kind of restructured some salary structures, and doubled down on 2023 is going to be the year of certification and learning and education.
Nice.
And tried to allow people to grow, which we always try to do, but we're going to kind of focus on that.
Lean into it a little bit. Well, there was a study that came out recently. I think that's a good point that talked about how not only culture, obviously we've got to get that right, and people have to feel like they belong, as you mentioned earlier, but I think constant development, learning, being challenged, being stretched, being encouraged to become a better version of themselves, both personally and professionally, is a part of what really makes a difference in people staying within the business. When they don't have those opportunities to grow, they have a tendency to find some other way to grow.
And the double-edged sword of that is, and it's happened to us lots of times, that's what we talk about a lot, right? Growing, right. And sometimes people will grow right out of the position that they were in, and we don't have another position for them, or they go to start a business, or they go with their family to be a bit, or they go to college to do something different. It's like, I'm tickled for them. That's awesome. I hate the fact that we lose somebody. That's amazing, but yeah.
Yeah. There's a saying. I may not get it right. It's like, well, what if you educate somebody and they leave your organization, and then the contrary is, well, what if you don't and they stay?
Right.
Yeah. So I think there's a challenge there as well, for sure. But I think we as leaders in our community, I think it's fantastic that sometimes people we look at it as graduating. It's like graduating from college, and they graduate from our organization and move on and do some amazing things. And that's okay too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned to me at one time was you're the CEO of the organization, and not everybody wants to be the CEO within the business, and you're trying to figure out how to deal with those dynamics. May not be ready to talk about it yet, may not know what's going on, but what's that looking like for you?
Well, this role has basically was created because of, as we kind of sort of grew, it's hard to be a full-time doctor and run a business. And there was just, when it was, we had multiple doctors. Dr. Hernan and I essentially kind of shared the duties of a CEO, but we didn't have titles or anything.
Sure.
And when he retired, it's like, okay, we have to have some structure. So we reorganized and had that structure to where I wasn't in patient care as much, but had an opportunity to kind of do more of the business part of it, which I enjoy. But as I get closer to kind of thinking about exit strategy, you have to be smart, and I'm not ready to do that yet, but you got to be thinking about it. And what you realize is that not everybody wants to necessarily do everything that I enjoy doing. And so we're reorganizing and figuring out what that looks like, because legacy is a big part. When I first came in '89, the practice actually was started in '67.
Wow.
So it's one of the oldest private practices in town. There's one other that's right about the same time. And that's important. We want to keep that going, that legacy going, because I think that there's not many groups out there that do what we do. And so to answer your question, it's really, we're working through what that looks like. It'll probably be a little bit different structure.
Sure.
But we're having some, one of the things I've learned early on is you don't always have the best answers, and you need to sometimes get outside and get outside help to look at it from a different perspective. So that's what we're doing. We're having some folks come in and look at it, and because it's not the same thing as it was, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So.
Well, I think one of the big lessons that people can take away from that is that you always have to be inside inside the organization, you always have to be thinking about what is the plan for the business to survive beyond its current state. When we were operating as a young business, we were just hanging on, man. We didn't have a plan for anything, but you get to a certain point and you realize that you're providing income and services for a lot of people, and you have to make sure that the business is sustainable beyond a single individual or even 2 or 3 individuals within the business.
There's no doubt, and I do think that you have to still have that, they call it a visionary, but I mean somebody that is looking 1, 3, 5, 10 years out. Now,
Right.
that doesn't mean you know exactly what's going to happen, because you don't, but you need to be thinking about it, and
Right.
you need to be strategizing and prepared. You don't like surprises, and so you should always have, and preferably the leader, has some visionary capabilities, because if you just sit around and wait, you're way too late.
Yep.
And that is a challenge when you're growing like crazy, because you're just, like I said, hanging on,
Yeah.
but I think that's one of the things that I do kind of sort of bring to the table is, and partly because I'm in my role in another national organization as an administrator of a number of doctors in the state, I get to see industry-wide things at the national level and international level, and kind of sort of know what's coming down the road. And so, but yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
That's important for sure.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you mentioned that you're one of the last remaining private practices in the area, and I know that private equity has come into your industry like it has so many others and had an impact. Talk to us just a little bit about what you're seeing in the industry as a whole as consolidation happens, as private equity gets involved, and they have their own motivations that aren't always serving the same way that you do. So what are you seeing happening?
I think it's just like every industry. It has impacted our industry. We saw it coming. And the other role I was talking about is a group called Vision Source. So you can kind of sort of think of it like a co-op. So it's 3,400 independent private practices in the country.
Wow.
And a lot of those are rural. They're leaders in their communities, and private equity would love to get a hold of those, because they're profitable, and they're entrenched and established in their communities, and gives them instant credibility. But we understood how that worked, the business model and EBITDA. That's the first time I ever really paid attention to EBITDA. And it really is about buying something, getting them together, adding more of them, aggregating offices, and then turn around and selling them. They're going to go in and try to cut costs. They'll get rid of staff. It won't be the same thing. And so we tried as hard as we could to educate on everybody, so you at least have the right information when you make that decision. Yes, they threw a lot of money at you, but if you really sit down and crunch the numbers, unless you have no other opportunity, then it's not a smart move. So we try to give them alternatives, and don't say don't, because we can't.
Right.
It's whatever you want to do. But it has impacted our industry, and our group of Vision Source doctors, I would say, nationwide, has done a really good job of trying to kind of fend them off. Only because we show the reasons why not to. And that's a big part of what we're seeing. A lot of doctors went to school like with GI Bill, or they started their own practice 45 years ago, but they never really thought about, now what am I going to do? They never brought anybody in. They didn't think about growing. They just thought, well, when I retire, I'll just sell the practice. Well, the new grads don't want to go out into rural America and buy a new practice.
Right.
And so we're trying to get docs that are 50, 55 start thinking about, exit strategy and succession strategy. And I think that's how we've basically addressed it, is just to say there's another way, and let's talk about what that kind of looks like. And if someone gets to that point and they don't have any other options, then got to do what's best for you. But I think history will tell us. In fact, we're already starting to see that kind of come back around, because it didn't make financial sense. I mean, somebody comes in and says, we're going to pay you 10x on your, it's like, that's not what? And that's not happening. There's ones going out of business now, filing bankruptcy. A big one is starting to, let people loose. So Yeah, so
Yeah.
we've talked a lot about it, and I do think communication and clarity
Yeah.
are important. I might have got that one. But there's 3 C's: communication, clarity, and you remember the other one?
Yeah.
But I think that's really important. We try to communicate so people don't get blindsided. So hey, by the way, this is what's coming down the road. So think about it, and not just get you're not out there on a limb by yourself. So
Yeah, I think you've nailed it when it comes to education, and you circled back to how important it is to have that visionary to know what's coming and what that next step is. Because exiting a business is hard no matter what, and if you're not planning for it 10 years out or more, it can really sneak up on you and be kind of disheartening because I've seen multiple small businesses that have worked their butt off for years, and they get to that point where they didn't have a plan, and they essentially have a business that's not worth anything unless you're in it, operating it, and making the money, as a family practice or a family business, and that can be really tough.
Yeah. Have lots of those kind of discussions, and we see it in all industries. I mean, you really do, and I totally understand why. I mean, I get it, 100% get it. But I think that is a huge right now deal. I think it's starting to change a little bit. What are you seeing that in your industry?
Oh yeah, they're coming in hard, and we literally are at the point where it's not unusual for us to get 10 approaches a week from some organization or another, and when you hit a certain size, it escalates. Yeah.
It's one of those things that's so funny. I always go back to the simple things, the things that your parents taught you, the rules that you kind of sort of should live by. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
That's one of those.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
Well, as we start to wrap up, I got to ask you a really important question. So, what do you do when you're a doc and you come in and you're dealing with a patient that's just got horrible breath?
Well, believe it or not, one of the classes you take in optometry school is how to do an exam in 15 minutes while holding your breath. So,
they actually teach it.
No, fortunately, we don't have to get in people's faces nearly like we used to, but there are times it's a little tricky.
Yeah,
but,
would you like a mint?
Yeah. So, yeah, that's my joke I always say, so I can hold my breath for a long time. I can even talk while holding my breath. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Steve, tell us some of your favorite advice, some of the best advice you've gotten in your life that you'd like to share.
I've always been a believer that if you do good for others, it'll come back to you. I believe that the Lord is keeping score. Someone's paying attention. Treat others like you want to be treated. Again, the simple ones.
Yeah.
I'm a guy. This makes this so bad. I go back and eat lunch with my staff. Pre-COVID, we got to do that a lot more. And I'd be talking about something. My staff would look at me like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, "Oh, you guys don't know because you're too young." So Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah.
Always let your conscience be your guide. That's just your fibers, your morals, how you were brought up really dictates what you do. But that isn't necessarily the same. That doesn't necessarily work now. But always let your conscience be your guide. Be true to yourself, and try to help others because been fortunate, and those are things that I believe. Be willing to change, embrace change. Don't ever think you're the smartest person in the room because guarantee you're not.
Right.
So those are some.
That's awesome.
There's lots of them.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, you bet.
Raise a glass.
Appreciate the opportunity. Wire Road, cool place here.
Awesome. Yeah. Congratulations on owning your journey.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah.